Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Robert Phoenix, and we are here for another edition of Sunday Night AstroLive. And thanks for being here. Running a little behind, but I promise you I will facilitate the beginning part of the show rather quickly, and we can drop into our pointed content, as it were. Let me do something. Let me check my audio here. Okay, looking good. Testing 1, 2, 3. How is everybody? How are you guys? Did you have a good weekend? Wherever you are. We are recovering from the latest edition of the flood scene. What was really interesting is, yeah, we had some flooding with the river, but it was really the creeks that were a nuisance this time. And the creeks had major runoff into sort of the main drag here. Like they call it Main Street, but then they call it Junction Highway. So it's done some damage, some businesses that were kind of resting below sort of the street level water line. But we are digging ourselves out here, and it's very hot now. So let me tell you what we're going to talk about tonight. Then I'm going to go into chat and hang out a little bit. As you can tell, we're going to be talking about the potential for a draft. And it's not just a draft, right? It's got to have some astrological legs attached to it. I'm going to bring you those legs. We're going to look historically at the draft, particularly in this country, and a very interesting, very, very interesting causal event in time that reflects some aspects that we're currently going through. And there's another interesting draft moment that shares some aspects with that first draft moment that I think you'll find interesting as well. We'll also be talking about the eclipse tonight on the 12th of August. It is our first of the eclipse cycles as we get to embrace, hug, welcome the nodal shift. That's right. It has been in Pisces, Virgo for, 18 and a half months or 17 months, right around there. And now it's getting ready to move into Aquarius, Leo, right? So we're going to be going through a very interesting phase shift in terms of what the nodes bring to us. And I'll get into some of that when we start talking about the eclipse. And what I did with the eclipse is I specifically went into other periods of time where we had an eclipse right around 17 degrees Leo, which is where this eclipse is going to be, to try to see if we can form some models that we can compare and contrast them with. And I think there's a there. And we'll talk about the eclipse itself just as a phenomenon. And then, of course, we have the chart of the moment, which isn't too far off from the eclipse, but I think is worth looking at. So we've got plenty to talk about tonight, astrologically. And I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being here. And let's get into some chat. Let's see where it's at. Okay. What do we got? DJ MC. What's going on, Michael? Good to see you back. KZ Gypsy Muse, the California Contrarian. What's up, brother? Crone Ranger, watching while cooking. Crone Ranger can cook. She's a good cook. What you got on the stove, Crone Ranger? Inquiring minds want to know. Let's see. Ms. North Museum. Phew, what a weekend. Let's see. Who else we have? Renee. Renee's here. Hi, Renee. Energy seems slightly in front of me. I took a spill the other day. Ooh. Spills aren't fun. Not fun. Is anybody else thoroughly annoyed by the primary advertising? I'm in Detroit and the ads are fully nauseating. Well, you better get used to it. It's early, right? They're hitting you early. But I would say get used to it because it's going to be bad. Really bad. Let's see. Maybe calling it strength. Wouldn't jinx it. Calling like a weekend. Oh, weekend. Weekend. The weekends and a weekend. So we participate in a week versus we participate in a strength. I see where you're going with that. Ubiquity, send it. KK, good one. There you go. Let's see. We got misbehaving too. Hope I had a great weekend. I had a great. I did. It was, yeah. It was good. It was good. Great. Let me tell you some of the things I did this weekend, and I'll give you kind of a heads up. So, some of you have had a challenge getting the hardback copy of the Celestial Blueprint. The reason why there was a bit of a glitch was because we reinserted some images that we thought were there. They weren't, and now they're in there. So it takes a while for Amazon to make those corrections and edits. And when they're doing that, if you ordered during that time, you probably would have gotten a bit of a glitch in the system. So they're back in, and then I should have hardcovers by Thursday. So I've been waiting to get that one little tweak in the book so we can have them by Thursday, hopefully, fingers crossed. So there's that. And I took care of a lot of other book related stuff this weekend. More to come, more to follow. And yeah, so there's that. We did that this weekend, and did a few other things as well, but worked out really well. Had a good time. Let's see, who else do we have here? Been doing it for 5 years. Seem to be catching on. Let's be catching on. Keep casting those spells on yourselves. Oh, all right. What else do we have here? I always had a great strengthened. I like the concept. It sounds clumsy. I'm just saying. Can we come up with an alternate that's not strengthened but isn't weakened as well? How about I had a great enlivened. I like that. We call the weekend the enlivened. I like that. I had a great enlivened. It rolls off the tongue a little bit better. Enlivened. Try it out for size. See what you think. Let's see. The new next pod is with us. What's up? There she is, the lovely and talented one. Andrea Garland is here. What's up, Andrea? Hanging laundry. Love for Gaia. I did feel the same generational trauma from all the previous wars. Yeah, it's there. Definitely. Janine is here. Hi, Janine. Brianne Eves. GFX. Fantastic thumbnail, dear sir. I was playing around a little bit, and I was really trying to sex it up a bit more. But it's funny, when I went for sexy, my AI or creative companion said that, I might be going in a direction that it didn't like, and to try to repurpose it a little bit. So I stuck with the old World War II theme there. Let's see, who else do we have here? Let's see, Peter Bayonne. Gen Z gets to decide if they want to risk their lives for Israel or here at home and dismantling a tyranny. We're going to get into that. I'll give you my prediction. We're supposed to be making predictions here as astrologers. That's our job, right? And I'm usually pretty good at it. Every now and then, the so-called reality generator changes a few details, and we get close, but not quite. But I think I got a pretty good track record. So I'll make a prediction tonight. right here on this show. That's part of what we do. Let's see. Charles, draft men over 60 first. You first, Charles. You first, brother. Here we got Strom J. What's up? What's up, Jack? 88 Gary. 88. Hi, Gary. I'm so ready for a shift. You are the shift. You are the shift. You are the shift. Let's see. Neil the Wise. What's up? Sip stiff drink in San Jose in the house. I like it. I like it. San Jose, my old stomping grounds. The East Side. East Side San Jose. With low riders. Going down on Story and King. Don't. Let's see. QZ422. What's happening? Neptune is confusing. Neptune is always confusing. Hey, we got Elsbeth Aaron. Hi, Elsbeth. Good to see you. So above it, yes, you are. There's our guy, Francois Poulin. Francois Poulin. We just call him Francois. Hi, Francois. Let's see. Paula Penbade. Hi, Paula. Sunday fun day. We got Tondar in the house. What's up, Tondar? Kaleidoscope, you're digging the hairstyle. Just ordered my book. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I never know what's going to happen with my barber. I never know. I tell her to go a certain way, and it comes out looking a little different. I've given up. I've let go of control. It's like, okay, I'm your creation, and that's it. Let's see. Sandra Wells. What's up? What's up, cuz? Sandra Wells, OG. She goes way back. She goes back to Blog Talk Radio. Much love, Sandra. No Catino. Lady Karashka. That sounds very, very mysterious. Do you know who Lady Karashka is? No. You must know Lady Karashka. Thor at the door. There's our guy, Steve. What's up? Your book came right after it was ordered. Nice. Good job. Thank you. Barbara Boots. The lemon meringue suits Robert. It's Sunday. You know, I try to go for the astrological effect here. The day that we're transmitting. That we're transmitting out to you. I got my Sunday yellow shirt on because it's an astrological thing. Let's see. Here we go. Nicholas Graham is with us. Hi, Nicholas. The Bisou road trip. Hey, darling. Renee. I caught alive. Bay Area SF. Shout out. Shout out to the Bay. Let's see. Barbara is having a session with Gaia of New Zealand. The concept was to replace weak with strength. I know. I get it. I'm down with the concept. I am down with the concept. I like the concept, and I endorse and empower your commitment to strengthened. It just sounds a little clunky. I like enlivened. Call it anything you want. All right. Let's see. Charles is Uncle Sam. That's a scary thought. Baby is here. She's eating a cucumber. I don't know if I got any cats around. Jasper's in the crown. I don't know where Peachy went. And the other two scofflaws have left. I'll keep my eye out for them, Tondar. People from both Russia and Ukraine are here offering men $3,500 a month to sign up and fight. 35. That's actually a very interesting detail and part of the theme for tonight's show, Lynn. You're slightly ahead of the curve. Do BlackRock and Vanguard have major stakes in Gaia TV? I don't believe so. I think what's that company?. You know SoftBank? I think SoftBank might have an investment. in Gaia. She'll always be baby Tondar. She'll always be baby. At 18, she'll still be baby. Let's ask the Google, does SoftBank have we'll go with percentage, a percentage of Gaia TV. Let's see. No. Okay. So I'll tell you. See, I'm glad I asked. The main stakeholders of Gaia, which is publicly traded, Yurka still has 23%. Institutional investment firms. So you might be right. You might be right because BlackRock is an institutional investment firm. I thought SoftBank might have had. So let's do this one more time. Which, let's clarify this. Which, paste. Let's find out. Let's see if we can get any info on that. Oh, yes. I'm glad we dug. I'm glad we dug a little bit. Great question. Great question. And here I am following up on it. And I'm going to give you the skinny. Here you go. You ask, and I will do my best to provide. Of course, we have the black screen. So let's do this again one more time. And here's a list of Gaia's investors. AWM Investments, they have 6.29% of the company. BlackRock has 5.09% to 5.34%. So that's 1.8 million shares. Ooh, that's a lot of shares. AWM has 1.25 million. Ameriprise Financial has 4.66 with 928,000 shares. Nantala Capital Management, 4.959%, which is 914,000 shares. S Square Technology, 3.63%, and 723,000 shares. And then we have Vanguard, which is, I believe, isn't that Paul Singer, if I'm not mistaken, 3.13% of the company, 624,000 shares. There are your private equity firms that have a stake in Gaia TV. That's what we do here. We get right to the core. There you go. Right to the core. Let's see. Here we go. Jufensai. Hi, Jufensai. Gail Marishak from Canada. Hi, Gail. Nice to see you. Yeah, because Robert Edward Grant sounded quite confusing plant to me. Interesting character. Let's see who else we have here. Nancy Carroll. My grandson is 26 and turns 27 in November. So will he slip by the draft? Let me tell you how it'll work. So in December of this year, every young man between the age of 18 and 25 will be automatically registered for the draft. So you don't have to go down somewhere and fill something out or go online. Now, that in and of itself is an interesting proposition, right? Because that means I got a database on everybody from 18 to 26. So I think whoever they're working with over there in DC and their data gathering services are probably pretty robust. Don't worry, you don't have to go down there. You don't have to go online. You can still be playing Call of Duty. We'll just sign you up. We'll just sign you up. Don't worry about it. That's what's going to happen. We're going to get into the actual mechanics of what a draft would look like, and also historically, astrologically, two really interesting periods of time where that took place. All right. Let's see who else we have here. I did a great analysis on Hancock. Oh, thanks. Let's see. Yeah, Neil Smith in the house. Another example of hijacking spirituality. Yeah, I mean, if I was a private equity group, which is really what they do, right? They just go in and they start buying everything. I mean, I think that they've got their fingers in everything. Seriously, everything. But if I were them, I'd probably want to cover all my bases and get as many so-called spiritual networks under my realm of influence as possible. So let's see. Does that include women? No, not according to the language. It said young men. Young men. Not according to the language. But that could always change. Oh, I'm wondering if we're going to have draft riots. Well, now that you brought that up, that's one of the things we're going to cover. That is, Tondar raises his hand. Yes, Tondar. Are we going to cover those draft riots like they had in the Civil War? Tondar, you're absolutely right. We are going to talk about those draft riots. Yes, indeed. We got Catherine Mueller. Hi, Catherine. My paternal grandparents had 2 children. My father's older brother was killed in the Philippines. I have girls of draft age. I'm seriously worried. I think everybody should be concerned, but I don't know. I just get the sense, like, have you seen the pictures from Ukraine? Look, there are pictures right now in Kiev. Like, if you walk down the street in Kiev, you will see cafes, open air cafes, tables on near the sidewalk. All you see at those cafes are young women. That's it. Young women. Because they've taken all the dudes. They're out there, right? They're in the trenches. They're trading bullets and trying to dodge drones. So I think that's more the model. And the reason why I think that is because, well, if there's a lot of young women who aren't in the war and not a lot of young men around who are at the war, they will be, unfortunately, available for young men who are not in the war, if you know what I mean. And as of late, we have taken on a significant amount of people from other places, other countries, other cultures, whom I seriously doubt will wind up going to war. They could, but I seriously doubt it. So they'll be here, and the young women will be here. That's what I think will happen. Let's see. Who else we have here? Food, air, water, own it all. They've got their fingerprints all over the place, man. Like, it's amazing. It's amazing how much those companies are vested in just about every single sector of our society. It's crazy. 3-son eligible, not good. And I think a lot of those old rules, they're out the door. Like, they all go. They used to have this rule where if you're your mother's only son, right, you don't go. That's gone now too. You know who's draft eligible? Don Trump Jr.'s son. He is draft eligible. Don Trump Jr. has an 18-year-old. We'll see what happens there. Oh, David Wilcock. Yeah, the David Wilcock thing was intense in many ways. Let's see. Diane, yes, you made it. Yeah, there are young men who are. This is interesting. I'm going to bring this up. I was in a tire store today. There was a good-looking young blonde guy with his mother reading a book. When the guy waited on me, he told me he's going into the military. I said, so sad that. So the military um, and drafting, enlisting. There is a trend of young men enlisting, and we're talking Gen Z. There's a couple of reasons why. Number one, they can't find work. That's number one. And number two, Gen Z has a bit of an ideological predisposition to be American. They do. And I'm not going to shit on them, right? For a long time. Well, what's long? Gen Z was really pro MAGA, pro Trump. Like they kind of got behind him because for a minute there, Trump was a little based. But I think that party's kind of over a little bit. But it still speaks to the ideological core of Gen Z, and it's that Pluto and Sagittarius that they have, which is all about sort of truth and freedom, and there's some ideals that go along with Sagittarius, like love of country, love of order. I mean, these things are in Sagittarius, and I can see why certain young men from Gen Z would be actually moved to enlist due to the fact that the job situation sucks and there's enough ideological, I think, buy-in for them to do it. So anyway, my take. Let's see. My oldest son is 47, has the sign of cancer. He had a heart attack Friday, and I've been with him been in the hospital. Oh, sorry to hear that, Nancy Carroll. That's I hope he's okay. 47 is quite young for something like that. Very young. So our I don't like to use the word prayers. You can do it. It seems so cliche, but our feelings are with you. Our feelings are with you, and all we have to do is think about our own children who would be in a very similar position. It puts us right in your space. So our feelings are with you and your son, and may he go through this period with courage and love. And if we do pray for something, let's pray that he gets a good doctor and some good medical support staff while he's in there. And let's pray for protection for this fellow so that they don't drop the ball and screw it up, and he can get back out and resume his life and get on his feet and reclaim his place in the universe. That we pray for. We pray for great care, and we pray for thoroughness and attention to detail, and most importantly, while he's there, love. And it can happen, right? Love and care from the people that actually take care of you in those places can go really far, really, really far. So if we're going to pray for something, that's what we pray for. And we look forward to him getting back out and resuming his life. So be it. Okay. Let's see. How do you get on locals? You join. There's a link for locals. And thank you for bringing that up, Diane. Tomorrow night will be class number 2 in understanding astrology, kind of a 101 class. So we'll be there on locals tomorrow night. Everybody, you don't have to pay. There's no paywall, right? This is to support the book being out. And if you want to learn more about astrology, it's still early. We're only on class 2. Last week's class is there. It's on video. And it's 90 minutes of your time, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time over on locals. The link is in there. You just got to sign up. It's that easy. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Let's see. Time to stand up and fight. We're not doing it. I wish I could be happier for the futures. That's that's a tough one, but that's an individual choice, right? Like those are things that we have to work through. And happy is a transitory state. It's a transitory state. You can see a little child and, they can be happy one minute and then the next minute they're, really sad or angry or whatever emotion is running through, their consciousness. But happy is definitely one of those. And it tends to be very, very ephemeral and short-lived, right? There's that famous line from Mad Men. What is happiness? Happiness is the thing that you get until you want more happiness, right? Like that's kind of what I'm talking about. And we think that, and I'm not saying that your sentiment is wrong, by the way, not at all. But we tend to think that if we get something, it'll make us happy. Like, God, if I can just get one of those, 2025 Jeeps that are like 8 inches off the ground or 10 inches off the ground. They look great and I'd look great. I know if I had that Jeep, I'd be really happy because I could sit in that Jeep and I'd be up above everybody. And if the shit hit the fan, I could take on the terrain. I'd just be really happy. I know I'd be happy. You might be. You might be happy for a while. And then you get the Jeep and then it's like, okay, this was great. My father was the king of temporary happiness. He was the king of, and he was just like that. He was like that. He would want something and invariably he'd get it. And it's like, great. How is it? Oh, I like it. I'm enjoying it. And then the next thing you know, he's selling it, a year later, 2 years later. I saw him do this all the time. Cars, trucks, motorcycles, right? It was always kind of this unending stream. And we didn't have a ton of money. We didn't. He was a Leo. He liked his pastimes. But I never got a sense that those things were the real happiness or the real fulfillment that he was chasing. I have no judgment around it, but I just saw that, right? So maybe happiness is something we can experience in the moment for a brief period of time. Our long-term prospects here, and dealing with the future and feeling into the future. I mean, I think it's clear that we're in a very unstable place, and you can't really quantify it, although I can if I try to. It wouldn't be that difficult. But there's this general feeling, and I wouldn't call it malaise, but this general feeling that things aren't right. They're not right. They're not going in the quote unquote right direction. And it doesn't seem like we have any allies or people in places that quote unquote matter who share the same feeling as we do. And I think those feelings are valid and real. I think they're real. And when you have that experience, it's hard to project into the future kind of based on where we are now. And most of you are really bright and you're really good at pattern recognition and you kind of know who you are, so I think that pointing the finger at you and saying, well, you're wrong because all these other things are happening is not the right way to go, right? It is not the right way to go. So let me give you a little example of what I'm talking about. If you want to be happy and you want to have a stake in the future so that your happy days are here now and your future happy days are 2 weeks away, there's another army there's another battalion that is calling your name, and that is the Q force, and they're out in force. They may not be Q, but they are Q, MAGA. Those people are always fucking happy. They're all, the shoe's about to drop, right? This week is going to be big. The arrests are coming, right? I mean, they look for just about anything. And it's like, it's like seeing the face of Jesus in a slice of toast. I mean, anything. Like Trump posted a picture of him and John F. Kennedy. It was like a video, like an AI video. Trump doesn't post his shit. The person who works for him does. On Truth Social, and there's Trump and JFK together. And everybody in that world gets a boner, right? They just, oh, yeah, that is great. And then what did Trump say? The gates of hell are going to open this week. Now, let's think about that for just a second. Let's think about that. He said that. Now, if you are in that world, you think that he is going to be the guy that is going to unleash the gates of hell on the deep state. That's what you think. Like if you're in that part of the equation, that's what you think. Somebody else who may not know that, and this gets back to the discussion that we had earlier in the chat scroll about weekend strengthened. When he says, the gates of hell are going to be open, maybe he means something different. Like literally the gates of hell are going to be opened. And it has nothing to do with Hillary Clinton, Comey, any of these other so-called Barack Obama traitors, right? But if you're in that world, again, and he says that, that's going to make you happy. Because out in the future, somewhere, they're going to be arrested. And that will make you really happy. Really happy. Because you've been waiting on these arrests for, a hell of a long time. Super happy. And then what else do you get after that? Well, then you get everything else that goes along with it. Now you're in the golden age. And the golden age is there to make you happy. I'm just telling you, you want to invest in happiness, right? Go hang out with those people. Because everything is happy, 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 happy. You can't tell them anything different. And if you do, what are you? Right? You're a panicant. You're a fascist. You're a Jew hater. You're an anti-Semite. You're a liberal. You're anti-American. And it's like, oh, is that what it's like to be happy all the time? You get to cast aspersion onto all these other people? Is that the price of happiness? But if you want to be happy, those people seem very happy. They just can't wait. Me personally, I think there's a different path to happiness. And it's called peace. It's called peace. Peace is something that transcends happiness. To be at peace with yourself, to be at peace with the world around you, to be at peace with your choices, to be at peace with circumstances in your life that can be very challenging. This is the master class. Peace is not dependent upon you being happy. It is a state that exists outside of happiness. It's a state that exists outside of sadness, right? That you have something deep inside you that brings you peace no matter what. And when you feel it, it is incredible. Let me tell you, it is really incredible. Nothing can ruffle your feathers. Nobody can get your goat. Whatever the future brings, que sera, sera. Now, how do you get that? Well, the Christians will tell you, bring Jesus into your heart. No Jesus, no peace, right? Quite possible. I'm not going to sit here and tell you no. That's one way of doing it, right? You can sit around and you can meditate and connect with, your quote unquote higher self. That's a way to like tap into peace. You do that enough, nobody can ruffle your feathers. Nobody. You just take the meditative state into the rest of the day, and there you are, right? You're there. You're present. That's another path. That's another route. But ultimately, that's the goal, to be at peace with the future. Now, That doesn't mean you're going to settle for the future. That's something completely different. It's not like, well, I'm just going to give up and, I'll go be what's his name? Go sitting on the park bench and wait, like, what the fuck is his name? It'll come to me. Like, you don't have to give up. Giving up is not peace. There are still things that you can accomplish, can achieve, and do, right? They're all there. Those things don't really go away, but they're not always dependent upon happiness, and your happiness isn't always dependent upon those things. Just saying, right? So it doesn't mean that if you feel peace, that you don't have to do anything. That's a misnomer. So I would rephrase the question, right? Reframe the question. Can we have some degree of peace inside of ourselves with a very uncertain future? It's not easy to do. Not easy to do. And I get it. I understand why Christians would go there, because there are things in life that are just way above our pay grade at times. People suffer really serious tragedies, and I don't have a problem with them, turning to God or finding Jesus in that really, really dark. I really don't. I don't have no why, because I went there at one point in my life. I went, what was a God moment? I didn't say it wasn't a Jesus moment, it was a God moment. Very dark place, and for lack of a better term, I was saved, right? And people are saying, well, what the fuck happened to you now? Right. Well, I did my best to bring a lot of that forward, but it was like, okay, there you go. You're off now. I gave you a little boost there. Go live the rest of your life and see how it works. All right. Let's get into some astrology. I've yammered enough. People always say, you talk too much. You talk too much. I'm out of here. I should always have a disclaimer at the beginning of the show. Part of this is just me being able to warm up and open up the vagus nerve to my higher self. Okay. This is where we are right now. Let me go back in here and do a little shifting. There we go. And let me come back. So we're going to start off with the old chart of the moment. The old chart of the moment. All right. Rumor on the streets is that we're about to experience some very hot weather. Supposedly, an El Nino is building in intensity somewhere beneath the airspace of Baja California, supposedly. I think we're going to get some really hot weather. And we've been having hot weather for a while. I don't think it's going to abate. Here we see the Sun-Jupiter conjunction. The primary sun and what we would call the secondary sun together. Wow. Look at that. But you had to look. This is the only time we will experience the Sun-Jupiter conjunction in Leo. The only time. Because it will move into Virgo by the time the sun rolls around and does its little waltz with Jupiter. It is the first Sun-Jupiter conjunction in the post-Pluto and Aquarius era, which places it firmly in the oppositional state of Pluto, also retrograde. We're still kind of, sort of, in the Barbault basket, only Jupiter has moved a degree. So not everything is 4, 4, 4, 4 again. So we have 4, 4, 4, 5. Now the sun is at the 4. So it's like, don't worry, Jupiter, I got your back. Literally got your back. So I'm just curious. You leave a comment in the comment section, or leave a comment even in chat. Have you experienced your life differently since we all jumped into Barbault's basket? Question mark. If I were to ask myself that question, I would say the answer to that question would be yes. But I'm not sure I would put it squarely in Barbault's basket. I think it has to do with Jupiter and Leo transiting my ninth house. It feels like this sun is rising, even though it's not the sun. Although the sun is in my ninth house too. I think ever since Jupiter went to Leo, I just decided to go full on Jupiter and Leo affirmation. Let's go. This is it. Let's let the sun shine. Right. It's really interesting, that song. The Age of Aquarius. Like, it starts off, this is the dawning of the Age of Aquarius, and then it goes into Let the Sun Shine, and it's the Aquarius Leo opposition in one song. I'm sure some of you knew that, but in case you didn't, just go ahead and listen again. What's really interesting, I love that song, by the way, is that if I'm not mistaken, the fifth dimension were the second group to take a crack at that song. I think the first group, again, I could be wrong, was the Mike Curb congregation. And Mike Curb, I think, wound up was the Attorney General or Secretary of State for California or something. Hollywood goes to Sacramento. And so the Mike Curb congregation, I think they're the ones that cut the track, and the fifth dimension weren't going to do it. And then they heard it, and I think, was it Herb Alpert was involved? And they said, you got to do this. You guys got to record this. And so they did. They recorded their version of it, and it just shot up the charts and completely, because they were great singers. Like Mike Curb congregation, a nice set of voices, but they're not the fifth dimension. Definitely not Marilyn McCoo. So we're kind of in that, right? We're in that tune. Is this the dawning of the Age of Aquarius? And Jupiter aligns with Mars. We're going to have Mars and Leo here coming up. Do you think that might count as a lyric from a song? Jupiter aligns with Mars. Mars and Light. That might work. And we've got, what's interesting here, this is like, all right, let's play with this a little bit. So we have Juno, which is about birth. Juno is the birth asteroid. And Juno's retrograde. It's, Pluto's retrograde. And it's like, come on, push. You can do it. You can give birth to the Aquarian age. Come on, Juno. Juno's like, no. The last time we did this, we had Atlantis, and we ruined it all. They pulled it all down. It'll be different this time. Juno. I promise. I think it's interesting. Is this a pause before the birth? Is this like a dawning of a quote unquote new age, away from Madame Blavatsky, away from the Rosicrucians, apart from all of them? We can define it on our own terms. Perhaps they would define it in this way as well. And for me, I always felt like this Pluto in Aquarius has, in order to get to the quote unquote enlightened part of it, we have to go through the endarkened part of it. And Pluto in Aquarius is ripe with endarkenment. especially retrograde, because we get to see via contrast what things actually work, what things don't work, who the players are, right? It's like, oh no, this is not working. I saw Sean Ryan on with Tucker Carlson, and I don't really watch. In fact, I can say not even really. I don't watch Sean Ryan's podcast, not because I don't have anything against Sean Ryan. Some people say he's CIA and whatever. I don't. Even if somebody might be a plant, you might learn a few things. But always keep it in the back of your mind, right? I'm not sure if I can trust this person. Maybe I'll take what I can learn, but I'm not gonna sign up for their club, right? So Sean Ryan was on with Tucker Carlson, and he talks about going to hell. If you haven't seen it, I'll give you the synopsis. He talks about going to hell. And how does he get to hell? Well, he takes ibogaine, and it's not just ibogaine. What is it? 5-MeO. He takes ibogaine and 5-MeO. Now, if you don't know what ibogaine is, it is the only psychedelic, naturally occurring plant on the African continent. They don't have mushrooms in Africa. They don't grow there. But ibogaine or iboga does. And it's from Central Africa, where a lot of little people live, right? It's the Congo. And they have all these different tribes. And some of them have different ceremonial uses for ibogaine. Mostly positive, right? So they take this plant, they prepare it, and there are generally 2 occasions, and there could be more, but I just know of 2 right off the top of my head, where a member of one of these tribes will go with the Bwiti, B-W-I-T-I, the Bwiti. And a Bwiti young man who is about to enter manhood will take the ibogaine. And it's a really interesting ritual that they go through. So what happens in this ritual is that they will have 3 women from the tribe, and they will straddle like a small stream. And once the ibogaine starts to hit, right? And when it hits, let me tell you, it is a powerful, powerful psychedelic. It is not a party drug. It's not like mushrooms. You're not going to be laughing your ass off. Like, you're going to experience things, big things. So what they do is they get altered with the ibogaine, and then they get on their belly, and they're in this little like rivulet that these women are straddling with their legs, and they literally have to like crawl on their belly through the legs of these women. And it suggests that they are being born again. And they're being born into the tribe. So what happens to those young men is that they have an experience with iboga, and iboga is the spirit of the plant. And iboga shows them their place in the tribe. It shows them, like, with this grand intelligence, like, this is who you are, right? These are your parents. And it goes, we'll fucking go back into the ancestral part of that individual. Now, this is your place, your time. This is what you're here to do. And they're dying, right? Like, you get big ego death with ibogaine, big ego death. You're dying. And then you're being reborn into this new image. It's like, now you're part of a greater community, greater group of people. And again, theoretically, you know what you're supposed to do. Like maybe it's like, oh yeah, you're a bow maker, right? And it shows you, making the bows and all doing all this stuff and making the arrows and going out, and testing it out. And I mean, it basically is giving you their vocational place in that world. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, right? The other thing that I believe that will happen with iboga is when a couple gets married. When they bond together, they're going to be together and they're going to have babies, right? They do the ibogaine, and then it brings them closer together. They find out, their purpose theoretically as a couple, which is basically have babies. But a lot of it is very ancestral, right? They'll see themselves as, literally being downstream of, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of other people who have done it in their tribe, but also directly through like whatever line they have. So an amazing, absolutely amazing substance. Now there's another group in the Congo. They're called the Mishongo, and they use ibogaine for towards a much darker end. And they're into kind of more of the superstitious, sort of like what we would call voodoo practice under the state of the iboga plant. I don't know how they do it, but it's not all one-to-one in the Congo in Central Africa. So when you take it here, like in this environment, usually what happens is that they will put a blindfold over you and you will trip hard and you'll trip long for a very long time. And in the blindfold state, you will see like a TV screen. This is quite common for a lot of people. You'll see a TV screen and you'll see areas of your life where you experience trauma and pain. And it's like and when it happens, it's like not just a screen, you're in the movie. And you have an opportunity to rewrite those scripts. And what's amazing is the fact that this plant or this spirit knows where you got snagged in your life. Like, that's really fucking amazing. That in and of itself is like, holy shit. How did this plant know this? This is a smart motherfucking plant. And so not only do you get to have a redo, and you do, like, you can craft that scene any way you want. And it doesn't have to even be Herculean. You can just look at that person in the face and say, you know what? I'm sorry I lied to you. And my lie sent me down a really bad path. And that's all you got to do. Right? And that person in that image will hug you. Right? And they'll say, it's okay. I love you. And it happens. Right? And then what happens after that? Well, you get something, there's a part in your brain that it actually zaps. And you kind of like move on from it. It's a really, really interesting substance, fascinating substance. And when you're done, you theoretically have gone through, your pain moments. And there are NFL players who are using ibogaine. They go to Mexico and they use it to work through their trauma. One guy, what was his name? He played for the Raiders. He was an offensive lineman. I think it was like the first pick in the draft or something. And then Robert Gallery. And Robert Gallery had a hard time post-NFL with all of his injuries and trying to figure out who he was when he wasn't a football player. And he went to Mexico and did ibogaine therapy, and he said, changed my life. And then there was this guy named Braden Smith, who still plays, by the way. And he is a player for the Indianapolis Colts. And he had this OCD. He was a Christian. I think he still is. He had this Christian OCD where if God was watching and Jesus was watching all the time, that he couldn't escape the bad or the negative thoughts in his head because he couldn't escape from the fact that he was being watched all the time. And so everything he did was not good enough. And he would set up all of these like OCD kinds of rituals to be okay and not feel like he might be judged because, you know, he looked at a women's boobs and saw a nice rack or something, right? Like it was really getting in the way of him being able to function. And they were actually thinking about giving him electroshock therapy. So he decided he was going to go to, I think, the same place that Robert Gallery went. And he went through the Ibogaine. And he came back and he's playing. He's playing for the Indianapolis Colts again. So this is a very interesting substance. Anyway, Sean Ryan took, he's done it before, but he took 5-3-MO, which is the toad venom. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you taking Ibogaine and toad? It just seems weird, right? Like if, again, he's taking Ibogaine, which is a synthesized substance, right? Synthesized substance. It's kind of like there's peyote buttons and then there's mescaline. A little bit different. He's taking the synthesized substance, but it's still the plant. Like the plant is still in there. And then you're throwing some toad shit on top. Like, what do you expect? What do you expect? If I was the Ibogaine plant, I'd be like, what are you doing, bro? You know, I don't need no toad on my jam. I'm going to take you to hell. That's where he went. He went to hell. That's what Sean Ryan talks about. That is endarkenment. It was a long way for me to get there, but that's endarkenment. And you can't, like, I know he did it, and I don't think it was a great thing to do, but at the same time, I also think that that's a crazy cocktail mix. Crazy cocktail. Okay, so we can't have a sense in some ways of what's right. We'll use the word right. Not enlightened, not anything sex. We can't have a sense as to what's right unless we experience or have a sense as to what's wrong. And I feel like that's where we are. And people are saying, no, you're black pilled. There's too much black pill going on. No, I don't think it's being black pilled. I think being black pilled takes you into a place of nihilism. There was a writer who recently passed away. His name was Jim Goad, Goad, and a very interesting character. And he was way out in front of everybody. He was a writer, primarily lived in the Pacific Northwest. And I think people would say that he was an unrepentant racist and any other ist, right? Like that was that. Jim was a misanthrope, but he was a very good writer, and he talked about things that other people were afraid to write and talk about. And so he passed away like a couple days ago, 65, Gemini, of course. And I'm talking about him because that's what happens when you have too many black pills. That ultimately you become a nihilist. And I don't think there's any redemption in nihilism. The only redemption in nihilism is that if you go deep enough into the dark, that you just might ask for some help and somebody might shine a little light on your situation or something. I think there could be some benefit to bottoming out, is what I'm saying. But how deep is the bottom? I think we all have our limits. Maybe some of us have been there. But when I see Sean Ryan and that exchange with him and Tucker, I just get endarkenment, right? Like he's going through a phase of looking around and saying everything is fake, right? Everything's a lie. And, they're talking about some very uncomfortable truths on that show. We're going to get into Israel a little bit later in the show. And, he's telling Tucker, he says, all these guys in the service know they're fighting for Israel. They all know it. They all know it. So how is that for morale? How's that for morale? It's not good. It's not good. And yet, if there's any prospects or change and remoralization, they're going to have to go there, and they're going to have to figure out how much it means to them to be an order follower and to simply comply, right? And he hints at the what's his name, Pat Tillman. He hints at the Pat Tillman thing. He knows what happened to Pat Tillman. A lot of people know what happened to Pat Tillman. Pat Tillman was hit with friendly fire on purpose because he saw things that he shouldn't have seen. Or let's put it this way. He saw things that everybody saw, but they shouldn't have shown them to Pat Tillman because Pat wasn't your average dude, right? He was going to fuck this. When I get out of here, I'm telling these people what the hell is going on. And they knew that. Pat was talking to guys, and they took him out. And I believe his family knows. And his family was given a choice. You can do one of two things. You can, we can lionize Pat, and we can make him a hero, and you can live with that as part of his legacy. And, we'll have a nice settlement for you as well. Or if you decide to go in a different direction, we got a film we'd like to show you. Right? And then they see the film and it's like, okay, Pat's a hero. He talks about it. But this is what they were talking about, right? They were talking about where we are now. And they're not wrong. Sean Ryan isn't wrong. But Sean Ryan ultimately can't stay there. He cannot stay there. And I feel like it's this Juno retrograde, Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. And look, I don't believe that, the Aquarian age is flying cars and teleportation and living till we're, the ripe old age of 200. Would I like to live in a world like that? Sure, why not? I'd give it a try for a while, but I don't think that's where it's at. This is just my take. My take is that we free ourselves from the constraint of giving our attention and spirit and emotions over to people and things who treat us like cattle or herds to be managed. And they'll give us any number of things at a certain point in time in order to keep the herd in line. This is what I think this is. And people selectively saying, no, let me give you an example. Aquarius is all group stuff, right? It's all group stuff. And some of you may disagree with me, and some of you might agree with me. What do we do together on a semi-frequent basis as a group? We vote. We vote. That's what we do. We vote. And what we're looking at here, right, again, like something that's very public, we do it en masse. You know, we start off in the 11th house and we wait in the line, and next thing you know, we're kind of in the 12th house and we're just by ourselves, right? We vote. When I see this, I'm like, how many people are going to participate in that ritual come November? Oh, I think less. I could be wrong, but because what we're getting, and this is what Sean Ryan said, and whether you like Sean or agree with Sean, he said, we're not voting our way out of this. We're not. Both parties are captured. They're captured. Nothing new can come through our collective participation in voting. It's not going to work. It's not. So when enough people, retrograde, say no, it's not just, we got a really low turnout. It's more like unhooking yourself from that system. And when we unhook ourselves from that system, guess what happens? We have different kinds of thoughts. We have different kinds of ideas. We have different ways of looking at things. We are not yoked to the system. We're not. And that's just one thing, right? That is just one thing. We're looking around. And we see things like, I don't know, sports. We'll go with sports. Group participation. And people look at sports and go, man, that's fucking rigged. Like people look at the World Cup and they're just thinking, that is the shittiest fucking World Cup final we've ever seen. How did we get to this point? How did we get to this point where a team didn't perform very well throughout the entire World Cup, managed to get to the final just so they could get there and quite possibly maybe have Messi win another World Cup. Although I do think the passing off from Messi and Yamin was another part of the story. But people look around, they go, this shit's rigged. And it's global. It's a group, right? I could go through any number of things, and we're noticing this. We're noticing it. And what we're doing is we're removing our participation in the things that define particular expressions of group consciousness. That's what we're doing. That's the nature of Aquarius. Aquarius is a group that's made up of little tiny cells, right? And each one of us is a little tiny cell within a particular group. And that group's within another group and another group. And you see all these groups, and they've got all these Pisces vesicas, right, that are sort of lining up and meeting and overlapping. And right now, the answer is what? No. It's no. No. However, that answer at some point will turn to yes. It'll turn to yes. And the yes is something that would be affirmative, something that we affirm and decree. Well, if we are not that, then what are we? If we do not define ourselves by these choices that we make, which are very binary, right? You kind of had Kamala, right? If we don't define ourselves by that, then things open up and they become different, right? It's almost like finding those glasses and they live. Once you stop participating in the group think, right, tremendous things happen. Now, you may feel alone, but you're not alone because other people are no longer participating in group think either, right? So to me, this is a big definition of what's going on here with Juno and Pluto, right? So we're in the golden age. No, we're not. We're not in the golden age. We're not in the golden age. Now, Jupiter's sun may say, yeah, you are in the golden age. Well, I think what we are is that we're at a place where we know that things can be better. Because what passes for reality for most people in their lives and on a, we'll call it the consensus level, is weird, scary, daunting, depressing, and any number of other adjectives that describe the fucked up and weird world that we live in, but not the golden age. And I'm not even sure if, once Juno and Pluto go direct, that we're automatically going to go into the golden age. We're not. But what it will do, theoretically, is it will move us from a place of rejecting things that are related to social and group activities. It's like, I don't want to be a part of that group. It takes a lot of balls to not be a part of a group. It does. For people, and I've lost people because I've been, a little tough on the Trump administration and some of those fine standing Americans like Howard Lutnick and Jared Kushner and little Marco Rubio. A little tough on those guys. But it takes some stones to step away from that if you've been in that world, right? If you were flying that flag for the last 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, right? If you're flying that flag and you look at what's happening, you're like, no, I'm done. Thanks. It's been fun. But, I really didn't sign up for this. That takes courage. It takes courage. Because what will happen? And this happens, again, we're talking groups, cults. You get called out. You get called out. And the people that you had these connections with and you were flying high and you were, partaking of the, Holy Communion, right? The Holy Communion. And you're not doing that anymore. You don't have those social connections anymore. And then they white them. What happened to you? What happened to you? You panicking? And it's like, well, the scales fell from my eyes. And that's what they don't want. They don't, it's like, we got to stand together. Where we go on, where we go, and all that stuff. And by the way, I don't necessarily disagree with them because we've seen the effects of, we talk about this a lot, at least I have, that when you're a conservative, it's really an ideology that's based on individualism. It's an individual ideology. When you get out of conservatism and move into, say, progressivism, right, you are leading into a group consciousness, a collective, right? Progressive is collective. Conservative is individual. And what the social engineers have managed to do is to drill this message in as many people's heads as possible that you need to hold the line. You can't drop out because this is what the Democrats do. They have blind faith and blind trust, and they may be completely wrong, but they never jump off an issue. They're always backing up other Democrats and or progressives. And I think a lot of people in that world, right, they got that and they use that with, we can't do this, go live in some other country. You're not a patriot. I mean, people get that. And you hear that also with cults. Like, you want to step out of the cult, you will have to run the gauntlet. And they will call you every name in the book, right? And they're going to tell you that you got fooled and tricked by other people who don't have your best interests at heart, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's all going down now. It's all happening now. We are in a weird schism. A weird schism. And I've been on Twitter for a long time. And there was a period of time where on Twitter, you had a bunch of progressive people. And they were there and they were out in force. And the so-called right was always going toe-to-toe with these people. And in many cases getting banned, during the Jack Dorsey days. A lot of those progressive people have left. They're over on Blue Sky and Threads. So now, right, the new schism is the MAGA people, the patriot people, versus the people that have said no to it all. And it's like the people have said no to it all, like in the minds of the MAGA Q people, they're the new progressives. And in the minds of the people who have like stepped off the train, the MAGA and Q people are the crazy new progressives. It's really weird. Like you can only get this with a Mars transit in Gemini, right? It's like the Spider-Man meme. You only get it with like a Mars and Gemini. It's like, Jesus Christ, we used to be part of the same family. And now we're split. And now you're playing the role of the Democrat progressive. No, you're playing the role of the Democrat progressive. I think it's, and when you look at it from that perspective, boy, do they really have us by the nose hairs, right? Like they being the social engineers, just moving everybody around. And that's why I think this retrograde with Pluto and Juno is good. Why am I doing this? Why am I a part of this? You know, do I believe in the thing that, they're selling me? What do I have to sacrifice if I'm no longer there or part of that experience? I get that here every now and then. Every now and then somebody finds Jesus and they're like, see you, Robert. I'm like, okay, great. God bless. I'm glad you found something. Right? It happens. It happens. Everybody should, at some point in time, think about who they are and what they're aligning with. I do it. That said, there's so much enthusiasm now with this Sun-Jupiter conjunction that could you do both? Could you say no and say yes to something bigger and greater in your life? Sure. Absolutely. As long as you're willing to be able to let go of the no and not feel like you're burdened by it. It's going to be very interesting. Very, we're going to segue into this draft stuff here pretty quickly. And I think the only way that they can justify a draft is if we have another 9/11 event in this country. That's the only way I think they can somehow sell this. And we're all on our toes, right? We're all kind of hyper vigilant, which isn't great for the cortisol levels. And we're all thinking, when's the next 9/11? When's the next 9/11? When's the next 9/11? Is it going to happen? Well, when it happens, you probably won't see it coming. You probably won't see it coming. And when it does happen, if when it does happen, it will be either two things will take place. And believe it or not, they can both be equally true. One is that it is so big and overwhelming that theoretically you can't deny it, right? You like every false psychological operation that happens in some ways has to be bigger than the one before it. 9/11 was pretty big. That was a big deal. What was bigger? Oh, I'd say COVID was bigger. 100% COVID is bigger because it only affected New York, theoretically, in terms of damage, well, maybe DC, whatever that was. And then it really impacted us here in this country in terms of freedoms. It's like, we didn't have the TSA on steroids prior to that. We do now. And could be a lot worse. It wouldn't be surprised if it gets a lot worse, thanks to all the flock cameras. But at the same time, it wasn't global. And COVID-19, again, whatever that was, global. And certainly significant in this country, but, by degrees, much bigger than 9/11. Much bigger. I mean, we weren't staying in our houses for weeks at a time with 9/11, right? didn't affect shopping, didn't affect our gym workouts, our kids going to school, I'd say COVID was bigger than 9/11. So if you think that, or you put that on the table, the next one has to be even bigger than COVID, which is pretty big, pretty damn big. So we'll do one of two things. It'll be so big and overwhelming if this goes down, right? So big and overwhelming if it goes down that people are just they're gonna wrap it around whatever's going on in Iran, right? They'll wrap it around that. But there are some people who have gone through this waking up process that it'll be a big test. And even though it is going to be much larger than these other two events, they will still step back and say, this doesn't add up. Right? So it's going to be interesting. For me personally, you want to get people into a war, that's what you do. You have a false flag. I didn't know this until today. I was listening to a podcast. We were in World War I for 111 days. Isn't that right? That was fucking mind blowing. Like we were in World War I for 3 months, and yet the death toll was pretty significant. Very strange. Anyway, can we expect a false flag with the Sun-Jupiter conjunction opposing Pluto? Ooh. That'd be quick, wouldn't it? A little soon. I think time-wise, and again, I could be wrong, time-wise, they have some groundwork to do for this draft. And the first date that is on the radar is December. I believe, was it December 28th or something like that? Right. And that's when they have their available pool. Now, the other thing, and I'll get back to this chart in a second, but I do want to show this to you, is, let me see if I can find it. I'll show this to you guys, is that they're going to war game the draft. And that's just from 2 days ago. Right. So in order for them and for the draft to be viable, feasible, and for them to figure out basically how everybody's going to try to either fuck it up or skirt the system, right? They need it. They need to war game it. So I don't believe that it's going to happen with the Sun-Jupiter conjunction opposing Pluto. Too much has to go into the preparation of ultimately getting our young fighting men over to some foreign land. So I think there is some time. And I would say that if we wanted to look at an event that would be attributed to all of a sudden people getting a heavy duty dose of patriotism, I think it would be a couple months out because they have to prep for it. They have to seed the ground. And seeding the ground isn't just the wargaming of it, right? Like you want to pay attention to Pete Hegseth, Department of War. You want to pay attention to commercials. You want to see how they're marketing war and how they're going to market the draft. And in order for as many people to say yes to it, right, they have to have as many prompts as they possibly can. So when that moment comes, people think that they're actually signing up for something on their own volition. I'll give you an example of this, and then we're going to round this off and then move on. Anybody ever watch that guy, Darren Brown? He used to have a show on in England, BBC. I used to watch him. And I watched him because he was very, very clever. He was an NLP guy who was able to get people to do things against their will. Like, he was fucking genius. Aquarian too, by the way. So there was this one episode where he gets these two guys, and it's all controlled. It's all a controlled experiment. And they have been chosen to deliver a pitch for a product, right? I think it's nylons, stockings. And I think they're part of the same team, or they're two guys from different agencies. I forget which, because they arrive at the company who wants to hire them in separate cars. So there's a lot of kind of lead up to this event, right? And what Darren Brown does after all the lead up is each one of them has the same path and route that they take to get to this office. And along the way, they make sure that this guy, there are two guys, each one of them see the same cues that are in the environment. It could be something in a shop window. It could be a guy who's working on the street that's doing something and has a sign, right? They're all preloaded suggestions. So that by the time each one of them gets to the office, they have a pitch that has been influenced by everything they've seen. And the way that Darren Brown kind of leads them through this thing, right? It's like these guys think that they're hitting on everything because of their experience and their knowledge and their background for this product. And they're not. And then they both ask themselves, they're different. They're from different agencies. And they both ask themselves, how did they get the same fucking idea? How did they come to the same conclusion? And Darren Brown brought them into a room where they have video. He says, let me show you something. And he took those guys through every step of that route, plus the preloaded sort of guidelines for creating this pitch. And they didn't have an original thought at all. And you should have seen these guys. They were like fucking stunned. This is what I'm talking about. This is exactly what I'm talking about. So you know, people are always decoding stuff in our, you know, matrixy world, whatever. And I think there's an interesting reason why, because when you see things and they start to happen over and over again, why are they happening over and over again? What are they showing you? What are they showing us? And why are they showing us that? They're programming our subconscious, our psyche, so that we make certain choices at certain points in time. It could be as simple as going down an aisle, looking at two products, and one product did a better job of like getting in your brain than the other product. It could be that simple. I'm going to take this one. Like, it's that simple. And you know, they ask you, well, why did you take that one? I don't know. I just trusted the brand more, right? So anyway, I feel like we've got to go through that cycle first. You know, we have to get the our youth, our young people have to get primed, so that when the event comes, and let's just put it out there that maybe the event never comes. We'll go with that. When the event comes, when the event comes, that them signing up isn't a byproduct of the event. The event is just the final phase of what's happened prior to the event. And it just pushes them over the edge. See, we got the moon in Capricorn tonight, and we're just, you know, so matter of fact and detached about it. We're yachting off here with Jupiter, Sun, and Uranus. The moon in Capricorn, we're not being sentimental. Hell no. Tomorrow, the moon will square Saturn and we'll square, it's squaring Neptune tonight. Right, so we got a moon Neptune square. Neptune's retrograde, by the way. Saturn soon to, let's see. Old Saturn just went retrograde as well. Neptune, Saturn, Pluto, retrograde. So moon Neptune square, I don't know. Emotional dishonesty. I would say be on the lookout for that. Is it easier to go black pill and have that as an antidote for emotional dishonesty? Meaning that everybody else around you, the people out there in the world, are emotionally dishonest. And they are emotionally dishonest. And sometimes they'll give you a little truth. They will. I'm not saying everybody, not everybody, but there is a lot of them. Like, I'm sorry, current administration, a lot of emotional dishonesty. And even the Democrats, they got emotional dishonesty. This system is emotionally dishonest. I'm not pointing one group out more than the other, although I have been, I guess. The system is dishonest. And with the moon Neptune square, you can say, oh yeah, it's brutal, harsh, dishonest, and I'm going to crawl up into a ball and have some nice chamomile, crawl up into a ball and listen to some ASMR. There's nothing wrong with that. The harder transit or aspect is this moon Saturn square, which will be more on display tomorrow. And that's a little depressing. And I hope I'll give you something not so depressing to think about, although it's not my responsibility. But I always attempt to find something that you can latch onto that's at least mildly interesting. Well, how about this for mildly interesting? Jupiter sextile Uranus with the sun. Hello, improvisation, right? Hello, being on the fly. Hello, winging it. It actually, this aspect really supports that, right? So what does that mean? Well, improvise. I like improvising. That's what I do most of the time, although I do put some work in. Improvising is fun, especially in public. I had an improvisational moment last week. I was at the HEB and I was getting some medicine. And the guy who was my personal pharmacist, his name was Alton. And Alton was tatted up. And he had a nice, clean haircut, glasses, and he had a half of a nose ring. It looked like one of the nodes. This is what Alton's nose ring looked like. Very delicate. And Alton said, well, thank you. Is there anything else I can do for you today? And I leaned into him and I said it loud enough so people could hear me. I said, yeah, you got any pharmaceutical cocaine back there? And he started cracking up. And there were some smiles there on the faces in line. See, that's what I talk about improvising. Right? We go through life every day and, we just have these stock answers for, rote conversations. And I know there are a lot of people who are introverted and they hate that shit. They hate small talk. I don't like small talk. I don't mind small talk because I usually drop hand grenades at small talk for fun. They're laugh grenades. This is what I'm talking about. Use your life as a creative tool. You should be having fun and, playing around and, messing with things, but not in a bad way. Like, not because you don't want to be one of these people where you get on an escalator and you just block everybody. I guess what a weird pastime that is. Don't like it. If I was on an escalator and somebody did that, and I was behind them, and hopefully I'd be wearing shoes and not flip-flops. I tell people to get back. Just get back, get back, get back. And I would kick that motherfucker in the crotch from behind. That's what I would do, as hard as I fucking could. That's what I would do. And he would just crumple, and people would just, that would be a very improvisational moment, wouldn't it? Do you think anybody else behind me would have a problem with that? I don't think so. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting. I didn't go to enough malls, but somebody's going to do it. Somebody's going to do it. In fact, I don't know. Maybe we could have escalator vigilantes, and they just like prepare for these moments, and they wear Doc Martens, with the steel toes. It's a bit extreme, I know, but I'm just giving. Don't allow the system to get you down. We started this talk about happiness, and although that's not a long-term strategy, not letting it get you down is a step in the right direction. And then what is the antidote? What is the prescription for that? Don't take it too seriously. Fuck with it a little bit. Have some fun. And while also understanding and remembering that these are not typical average times we're in. Not always easy, right? We do have this Neptune-Jupiter trine, which I really like. So for all you dreamers out there, what's your dream? What's your passion? What's your dream? This, even with Neptune retrograde, like what dream have you left behind? What dream or what work or what thing that you loved, Jupiter Leo, maybe it was a hobby or a pastime, the thing that you loved, what did you leave behind? And you had to fill in the blank. I had to get a job so we could support the kids. I had to get a job so I could help out with my family. Right. Well, what is that thing? Figure it out. Because it's a great time to revisit that thing and bring it back. Put some love into it. Jupiter and Leo, expand. And it's the same thing with Saturn. It's like, oh yeah, I remember I was pretty good at this. Let me go back and get my chops back. Right? I like these trines. I think they're great. We also have a nice Mercury-Venus trine, or sextile rather. Mercury is direct. Venus in Virgo, Mercury in Cancer. Great listening aspect. Really great listening aspect. You don't even have to come up with a solution. Just listen. All you got to do is listen. Easy. You listen. If you listen well enough, you can avoid conflict, which we see with the Venus-Mars square. Listen intently. Really listen. And not only can you avoid conflict, you can come out a winner without ever throwing a punch or saying a crossword or challenging somebody. Just allow them to unfold their story. It's that easy. Really like it. So we have some challenging things going on. We also have some really cool things happening. And a lot of fire. You throw in that Sun-Jupiter conjunction, and it is hot in the city. Okay, let us go back in time. And let's talk draft now. Let's talk draft. There was a particular period of time where the draft was actually instituted. Yes. Tondar alluded to this originally at the beginning of the show. March 3rd, 1863, Abraham Lincoln sets up the draft for guess who? Them Northerners. I want you to take a look at Neptune for a second. There's Neptune, 2 degrees, Aries. Now we know that the Civil War pretty much went off when Neptune was at 0 Aries, Fort Sumter, right? I think Neptune was at the final degree of Pisces. You know, they have this siege of Fort Sumter. One fucking day, right? Fort Sumter, the guys, okay, we're good. We surrender, right? We surrender, and the next day, the day of the surrender, it is Neptune and Aries. Civil War on. Yeah. And where's Neptune now? Neptune's in Aries. We've talked about this. And it is also in Aries when they first institute the draft. It is military. Aries is military. And Venus is the relationship to the military. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to get people to go to the South and fight for abolition, right? Like it is a spiritual cause. Theoretically, oh, you'll feel good about yourself. You'll feel good about yourself. Not everybody felt good about it. They did not feel good about it. In fact, they did not want it. They being the people that lived in the North, and mainly from New York. Other states, but New York was not feeling it, right? There's a little bit of that in as part of the backstory in Scorsese's Gangs of New York. Now, let me show you what they did at that time in order to incentivize people to join. Right, so I'm going to share this. So this is from New York. This is a poster from that time. And I'm going to show you a bunch of other posters from that time. What they're doing is they're incentivizing people to sign up and not be drafted. Forward volunteers, take the bounties while the opportunity lasts. So these are the various wards. Enlisted Duryez Zouaves, 2nd Battalion, 19th Ward, Brooklyn. The corner of Bedford and Clymer Street. So I guess you would get the bounty for the 19th Ward, which is where this is from. You'd get a New York State bounty, which is $50 worth. It's in Kings County, so you get the Kings County bounty. And then you get the United States bounty. So all said and done, that's $125, $175, $235. Is that right? 25, 50, be, yeah, $235, right? I think that's what you get. So that's 110 right there, 100, and 25, 235. Yep. That's what you get. So you get $235 for signing up, or you'll get drafted and you won't get any money. And that's not the only poster for that. No. If you go through and look at all the other posters at that time, which I'm going to show you, it is very, very similar. And they're all basically saying, right, that, you know, you need to get on board now, right? Enlist now and get your $100 bounty. Don't wait to be drafted and lose the bounty. Another chance to avoid the draft, $400 bounty. Volunteer, avoid the draft, $160 bounty. Avoid conscription. You know, so they're trying to incentivize people. You have $50,000 in prizes. They're trying to incentivize people to go off and fight. Right? That's what they're doing. And keep your eye on that as well. Like keep your eye on the Army all of a sudden starting to offer bonuses for people to sign up. When you see bonuses coming, you will know that the draft is not far behind because they'll let it out, right? They will let it out. And they'll basically, however you'll see it, right? You'll like, the good thing about joining now is you get a bonus. And if you enlist versus get conscripted, you can actually have a say in where you go, meaning like which form of the armed services you want to go in, right? You can have a say in where you go. But if you're drafted, you're going basically the Army, motherfucker. That's where you're going. So keep your eyes on this kind of language because it will mirror this language. Now, what'll be interesting, it's a ways off, obviously, but I think for historical sake, we want to pay attention to the Venus-Neptune conjunction when it comes around again next year, right? Usually around March. We want to pay attention to that because that would be the mirror reflection of the same conjunction. I want to show you something else interesting about this chart. Okay, so one of the things, first of all, if you want to talk about money and resources, let's talk Pluto, right? Let's talk Pluto. Get your bounty. Get your money. It's very Plutonian. Pay attention to Jupiter here. Pay attention to Jupiter. Jupiter is in Libra, 26 degrees. There's Juno. Not as close as Juno Pluto that we've seen, but pretty close, right? And Jupiter in Libra is what about balance, fairness, all the things that theoretically you'd want people to be invested in so that they may want to sign up for your draft. Saturn's in Libra, also retrograde. So what's also interesting is that Saturn goes retrograde of 7 degrees in December, and then it starts up again. Not quite in exact opposition to this Saturn, but pretty damn close. They had a hard time. Like if I was there and I was running their conscription model, I would have said, you should probably wait till Jupiter goes direct. Just saying, honest Abe. Just wait till Jupiter goes direct. Speaking of which, did you guys see where LeBron James finally made his decision on Friday? Finally. He made that fucking decision when Mercury went direct. It could be just a little bit of a coincidence, but I think LeBron James he and his buddy, Rich Paul, they're looking for Mercury. Like, we ain't telling anybody what team he's going to be on until that fucking planet goes direct. When it does, we'll do it. What's interesting about this chart, and they did, is the nodes. Look at the nodes, right? South node in Gemini. South node in Gemini. I mean, when you think of the Civil War, you think of Gemini, right? Brother versus brother, North versus South, gray versus blue. That's what you think of. Like you got that South node in Gemini. And then there's Uranus, which is very disruptive. And Uranus is squaring the sun and squaring Chiron. And it's like, okay, is this really the thing to do? Or is this really the thing to do? And then over here, we have the true node in Sagittarius, which I think is interesting. Number one, because the Sagittarius is philosophical and theoretically enlightened, right? It's like, well, of course, we must be one nation. Of course, we cannot, we cannot segregate other people. We must free them. It's very Sagittarian notion, very high-minded, right? Very, very high. We must all live together under one unified system, right? There's nothing wrong with that, except the people that were opposed to it at the time. And these were people, by the way, who were, in many cases, borderline abolitionists. They're like, look, we don't know how this is going to go. Okay, I'm all for it, but we don't know how it's going to go. There were many voices back then who were concerned. It's like, well, first of all, are these people going to be so angry that they're going to kill us? Like, we need to have that discussion. Because maybe what we're doing is we are incentivizing and accelerating our own demise by freeing people who want to slit our throats. A valid concern. A valid concern. The other concern was giving those people, right, tools that they could use once they were outside of their indentured status. And it's very complex, and there's a lot of complexity to this. I'm just giving you like things that I've read about pretty prominent people at that time who, held slaves and also held positions in the government. They were not anti-freedom or anti-abolition. They were pro doing it in a way that gave those people, theoretically, the most support and the best chance that they had to stand on their own 2 feet. Right. And what we see is the government coming in and just saying, we got to change this without any sense as to where it might go. There weren't any real safeguards. But again, it's very Sagittarian in a lot of ways, right? Where there's an incredible amount of self-righteousness at times with Sagittarius. So I could see like where this is going. So this is a fascinating chart. And again, I wanted you to pay attention to Neptune, where Neptune is, but also where Jupiter in Libra is. Now, Tondar was absolutely correct. And it was, they had riots in the Civil War or the lead up. So do you think that if we went through a draft process, that it's just going to be all hunky-dory with all the pre-programming and all the incentivization? Do you think that with all that, and even if there was a trigger event, do you think people are just going to, bum rush the recruitment offices? No, I don't think so. And they weren't doing it then either. They were having riots. So I'm just going to read through some of this. The New York draft riots occurred in July 1863 when anger of working, so it's a few months removed, right? March, April, May, June, July, 5 months. Sparked 5 days, some of the bloodiest and most destructive rioting in U.S. history. Hundreds of people were killed, many more seriously injured. And Black New Yorkers were often the target of the rioters' violence. These guys were pissed. You know why? Because the so-called Blacks of New York, they weren't being conscripted. And those dudes were not happy about it. The guys who were having to be drafted, they were not happy about it. All right, let me throw this out there a little bit. As the business capital of the nation, New York City had not welcomed the onset of the Civil War, has been losing the South as an important trading partner. Yeah, of course. Cotton was an extremely valuable product for New York's merchants. Before the Civil War, cotton represented 40% of all goods shipped out of the city's port. And long after slavery trade was made illegal in 1808, the city's underground market enslaved people to continue to thrive. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, there was even talk of New York seceding from the Union itself. So intertwined were the city's business interests with the Confederate States. As the war progressed, New York's anti-war politicians and newspapers kept warning its working-class white citizens, many of them Irish or German immigrants, that emancipation would mean their replacement in the labor force by thousands of freed enslaved people from the South. Okay, they're telling these guys, hey, look, you go free them, they're going to take your jobs. Is that true? Not immediately. Not immediately. But when you get into the late 1800s, early 1900s, you have waves of free, quote unquote, freed slaves from the South migrating to places like Chicago, St. Louis, Detroit, and getting jobs in industry, particularly the motor industry. Now, was that like a heavy duty burden for the white man to let some black men work on the line in Detroit? Probably not, right? So were they wrong? I wouldn't say no. They weren't necessarily wrong, but they weren't necessarily right either. Like there was plenty to go around, and at the same time, I think that we also understand that based on what's happening now, with a large swath of quote unquote new people showing up, that jobs can be short. And there can be people that will fill those positions that were originally available for another group. Just saying. All right. In September 1862, President Abraham Lincoln announced the Emancipation Proclamation, which would take effect early the following year, confirming the workers' worst fears. At the time, Lincoln's decision for emancipation sparked protests among workers in the city, as well as soldiers and officers in New York regiments who had signed up to preserve the Union, not to abolish slavery. Two different things. Facing a dire shortage of manpower in early 1863, Lincoln's government passed a strict new conscription law, which made all male citizens between 20 and 35 and all unmarried men between 35 and 45 subject to military duty. Though all eligible men were entered into a lottery, they couldn't buy their way out of harm's way by hiring a substitute or paying $300 to the government, roughly $5,800 today. At the time, that sum was the yearly salary for the average American worker, making avoiding the draft impossible for all but the wealthiest of men. Compounding the issue, black men were exempt from the draft as they were not considered citizens. Riots over the draft occurred in other cities, including Detroit and Boston, but nowhere as badly as in New York. Anti-war newspapers published attacks on the new draft law, fueling the mounting anger of white workers leading up to the city's first draft lottery on July 11, 1863. Riots began. For the first 24 hours after the lottery, the city remained suspiciously quiet, but rioting began early on the morning of Monday, July 13th. Thousands of white workers, mainly Irish and Irish Americans, started by attacking military and government buildings. Again, you see some of that in the gangs of New York. You see some of that. And became violent only toward people who tried to stop them, including the insufficient numbers of policemen and soldiers the city's leaders initially mustered to oppose them. By that afternoon, however, they moved onto target black citizens' homes and businesses. In one notorious example, a mob of several thousand people, some armed with clubs and bats, stormed the Colored Orphan Asylum on Fifth Avenue near 42nd Street, a four-story building housing more than 200 children. They took bedding, food, clothing, and other goods and set fire to the orphanage, but stopped short of assaulting the children, who were forced to go to one of the city's almshouses. Riots caused violence and bloodshed. In addition to black people themselves, rioters turned their rage against white abolitionists and women who were married to black men. White dock workers, long opposed to the black men working on the docks alongside them, a demonstration against employers hiring black workers on the docks had turned violent earlier in 1863, took the opportunity to destroy many of the businesses near the docks that catered to black workers and attack their owners as part of their effort to erase the black working class from the city. By far, the worst violence was reserved for black men, a number of whom were lynched or beaten to death with shocking brutality. In all, the published death toll of the New York City draft riots was 119 people, though estimates of the actual number of people killed reached as high as 1,200. Well, then they call in the troops. New York leaders struggled with the task of containing the draft riots. Governor Horatio Seymour was a peace Democrat who had openly opposed the draft law and appeared sympathetic to the riot. New York City's Republican mayor, George Opdyke, wired the War Department to send federal troops, but hesitated on declaring martial law in response to the rioting. On July 15th, the third day of the protest, rioting spread to Brooklyn and Staten Island. The following day, the first of more than 4,000 federal troops arrived from New York regiments who'd been fighting in the Battle of Gettysburg. They're like, stop fighting here, get your ass up there and go fight your fellow New Yorkers. After clashing with rioters in what is now the Murray Hill neighborhood, the troops were finally able to restore order, and by midnight of July 16th, the New York City draft riots had come to an end. In addition to the death toll, the riots had caused millions of dollars in property damage and made some 3,000 city's black residents homeless. The New York draft riots remain the deadliest riots in U.S. history, even worse than the 1992 Los Angeles riots and the 1967 Detroit riots. So, they decided that they were going to whip up an all-black volunteer regiment, just, I guess, to equal it out. If we have a draft, we're going to have riots. I'm telling you that right now. We are going to have riots. It will happen. For me, the draft, if it is initiated, will be the start of a civil war. Start a civil war. The draft in 1863 was a response to the Civil War. A draft in, say, 2027 will start the Civil War. All right, I got another draft chart to show you here. This is December 1st, 1969. That is the day that the draft lottery for the Vietnam War was kicked off. Now, prior to that, they drafted people. That started in 1964. But they were giving deferments for guys in college, guys that were married. And when the draft came around, the lottery came around, those deferments went away. So the way that they did it is they used like birth years and there were numbers involved. So like you could be in the lottery, draft lottery, and not have your number called. Or you could, and they would call your number. So this is where things start to get really heavy. 1969. Now, prior to 1969, clearly there were protests for the Vietnam War. There were drafts going on. You could go to college, get a deferment. You could be married and have a deferment. This was the end of the deferments. So what's interesting about this draft, if you're paying attention to the last chart, there are some overlapping aspects here. Number one, the Venus-Neptune conjunction. Right? We saw that in the previous chart, albeit with Venus and Neptune and Aries. Here it's in Scorpio. Very, very interesting. Right? And remember, I told you to pay attention to Jupiter. Jupiter in Libra, almost exactly in the same place. Here we have Jupiter in Libra at 26. Here we have Jupiter of Libra at 27. The only difference is the other Jupiter was retrograde and was also conjunct Juno. But it's interesting, in both of these seminal draft moments, Jupiter is in Libra. Really, really interesting. And here, right, it's going to be fair. Well, we got to be fair. We got to have a lotto. We got to have a lottery. This is the fairest way of doing it. I'm not sure that the 1863 version of it was very fair, right? It wasn't fair. But Jupiter in Libra, still, nonetheless, a very interesting correspondence. Chiron in Aries, 2 degrees. You know, when Johnny comes marching home, there's your Chiron in Aries. We're about to send some dudes over there, and it's going to get really fucked, right? Now, how fucked could it be? They'd already experienced the Tet Offensive in 1968, but they needed numbers, right? And there were still plenty of days ahead where it would be scary, bloody. And you have to also understand that there were guys who had done their term. Like they passed through Nam for a year. They were done. So they needed new people. And they were going to allow less people to slip through the cracks. And it was Nixon. Nixon instituted the draft lottery. Also, we saw in the last chart the true node in Sagittarius replaced by the sun in Sagittarius at 9 degrees, 2 degrees off, but still kind of that Sagittarian moment in time, right? This, I think, is a little bit different because you're also dealing with Indochina, which is very Sagittarian. Like you're going to go off to another fucking country. You know, at least in this quote unquote Civil War, it was, you know, took place here. Does it qualify as a ninth house or Sagittarian moment? Yeah, sure it does. But this is even further out, right? Further out. But those are the things that really like grabbed my attention for this moment. We had Jupiter, Libra, the Venus Neptune conjunction with both drafts. The one in 1863, quite telling, in Aries. And here we also have the representative of Sagittarius also present in this chart as well. So these are two really big moments in historically for, and there are other periods of time, obviously, right? We've got World War II, World War I, but these are the two big kahunas. When the draft was initiated in the Civil War with Abraham Lincoln, and when it goes into a lottery phase in the Vietnam War in 1969. It's a bad proposition. You know, Chiron opposite Pluto. Like that's not going to go well for people, right? Like if you're going to sign up for this draft, it's really potentially not going to go very well with the Chiron Pluto opposition. You know, keep in mind, right, that prior to that, like from 1963 on, right, Chiron's in Pisces, 62, 60, Chiron's in Pisces. And that's very different. It's almost like with Chiron and Pisces, these guys are kind of getting swept up, right? They're getting swept up in this sort of like universal draft, you know, this big fishing net, right? They're just getting everybody that's, you know, a certain age, very Piscean. But here it becomes selective, right? Through the lottery. And hey, you never know. Sun in Sagittarius, trine Chiron. You might get lucky. You just might get lucky. You know, what's interesting is that when this happened, a number of guys were trying to join like the Coast Guard. They couldn't do it because the Coast Guard had too many people that wanted to sign up. Now, if there was going to be a draft, it was unavoidable signing up for the Coast Guard and being a part of the Coast Guard could be worse. Could be worse. Enlisting in the Air Force, I'm not sure if they take everybody. Could be worse. You're not going to be on the ground, if you know what I mean. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I feel like if they go down this path, it is really going to initiate a civil war. That's going to set it off. It'll set, and they're running these games, right? They're running this war game sim about the draft, and they're using AI. So they're going to have all these scenarios. They're going to have all these different scenarios under which friction and tension get in the way of people signing off on the process. Am I right? I think I'm right. I think I know I'm right, at least from the simulation part. I think Mars here in Aquarius is really interesting too. It's like, okay, what kind of batch of soldiers are you going to get now that you've done this process and this is the day? And hello, Mars is in Aquarius, because that's going to determine the soldiers you're going to get. You know, you go back to that, the other chart that we're looking at. Mars is in what, Taurus? Where is it? Right there? Where is it? Hold on, I just had it up here. Yeah. Mars is in Taurus. Right. So you're gonna get some grunt motherfuckers with Mars and Taurus. Right. Basic. We have some basic. These guys over here, not so basic. Right. Maybe you should have picked a different day. Maybe you should have waited until Mars went into Pisces. Just saying. And I think you could probably make a case, right, that the guys that they draft here post December 1st, 1969, they're different. They're different than the guys that they started to, pluck off the street, 63, 64, where they first start to show up. You think 5 years is not very much. It is. Right? It is. 5 years makes a difference. Those guys that they were picking up in 63, 64, like, what were they listening to? They're listening to Buddy Holly and the Beach Boys and, Elvis Presley and Bobby V. And, they were that was their music. Maybe a little Chuck Berry. These guys in 1969, what are they listening to? They're not listening to those guys. They're listening to Jimi Hendrix. They're listening to Cream, right? Listening to The Doors. That's who these guys are listening to. That's why they're different. They're like a different batch than that first wave. And that, to me, it's very Mars and Aquarius batch. Like, good luck. Good luck with these dudes, right? And I think also you see the anti-war resistance with the Mars-Neptune square. Like, no, we're not going here. We're going to go to Canada, or we'll do. And there are people who are conscientious objectors, and they did time. They walked in and said, I'm a conscientious objector, but I'm not going to war. And those guys did time in military prisons because they were, shirking their duty. What's really interesting is that you go back and you look, that first wave of guys who were being conscripted, that was Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was supposed to be in the Vietnam War. And he didn't, he claimed religious exemption. He didn't go. Right? So he was not able to fight. He got his title stripped. He wasn't doing it. That's one example. And eventually he comes back around again. But yeah, I don't think this was a great time. Because the crop of soldiers they got, they're different. They're a different bunch. Okay, so I just wanted to show you like some of the conditions. For me, the one that makes the one that makes just total sense is the 1863 chart, which is right here. There's that Venus-Neptune conjunction. We saw it again in the previous chart. We've got the South Node 11 conjunct Uranus, Gemini. Hey, our country's split in two. That, to me, that typifies everything you want to know about this. And then, of course, Neptune and Aries, and then the strange kind of echo effect of Jupiter and Libra and Jupiter and Libra. Now, Jupiter and Libra will be here again, but it won't be here for a couple of years. Right? We're going to go through Jupiter and Virgo, and then we hit Jupiter and Libra. So for everything to match up with Jupiter and Libra and Neptune and Aries, that's going to take us 2 Jupiter cycles, actually 3, including the one we're in, and waiting around. Right? So if we're looking for a perfect match with Jupiter, Neptune, and even Venus, we'd have to wait a while. Right? But again, we could have a Venus-Neptune conjunction, and will, in Aries, which will be a complete match with Venus-Neptune from 1863. Okay, so there you go. There is your draft Civil War info. The Civil War triggered the draft, and on the flip side, will a draft trigger a civil war? I think the answer to that question is obvious. Okay. I was going to talk about the eclipse. Where are we? Almost 10. I want to talk about the eclipse. I want to put it on hold. I'm going to put the eclipse on hold. And because I could be here for another hour, and I know a lot of you need to go, especially on the East Coast. You guys want to go to bed. So why don't I hold off on the eclipse, because it's going to happen on the 12th. Now, I was told to inform you that I feel like this is Groundhog Day, that I will be going in for my procedure for the 3rd time this coming Friday. So fingers crossed, it will be perfect. And I will get in and I will get out, and we will be talking about the eclipse next Sunday night. And I have everything lined up and ready to go. Hopefully, that's if I get out of the hospital in a reasonable amount of time. There's no complications. And if there aren't, I'll be back on the case next Sunday night. But next Friday is the day. So wish me well, Godspeed, and a quick and speedy recovery so I can come back on here and we can get into the eclipse. Okay, that's it. Don't forget, we got the book, Celestial Blueprint. I'll have copies shipped here very shortly. It's available. It's doing really well on Amazon. I was on there last week. It was number 2 in astrology books. How about that? You guys have helped make it number 2. And number 1 is a Kindle book, and it's really cheap. The Kindle book, their Kindle, the one that's number 1, which I saw a couple of days ago. The threshold, the barrier to get it, like, it's not a lot, especially if you have a Kindle subscription. So I would assume or expect that to be very close to them. But behind that is Celestial Blueprint, and you guys have helped make that happen. So thank you for that. Appreciate that. And don't forget, locals tomorrow night. We're back in Basic Understanding Astrology 101. And I know that I owe a number of you some callbacks and some follow-ups with emails. I promise tomorrow, that's my day. Monday's my day. I don't have to deal with anything. Like, I generally don't schedule clients on Monday. right, is my day to do the administrative stuff. So if you haven't heard back from me, you need to know that my email address where you can reach me is in the show notes. It's right there, right in the show notes. So you can send me an email address, the phone number for Quo, where you can leave me a message or text me. That's there as well. And then tomorrow I will go through that sifting process and get back to you. That's it. Like the show, subscribe if you're new. If you're new, thanks for being here and hanging out. And who wants to come up here? I bet you Tondar's baby is gone. I got my 2 cats down here. Anyway, all right. God bless. Love you all. Take care of each other. Treat each other well. And bye for now.